Welcome to Silicon Valley Clean Energy Finance Administration Committee meeting. Today is Friday, 8/12, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 12:12 p.m. And roll call, please.
Yes. Committee Chair Wei.
Here.
Vice Chair Meadows.
Here.
Committee Member Walia.
Here.
Thank you. I'll note that Committee Member Bozola and Abekilga are absent, but we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you.
I forgot I was vice chair.
And yeah, so I'm gonna open up for oral communications. Do we have anybody? We don't have anybody here. How about online?
No hands raised.
All right, so I'm gonna close the oral communication and go into item number one, that's a consent agenda to approve minutes of the February 27th, 2023 Finance and Administration Committee meeting. We have it, everybody read it? Any questions? Open up for public comments. Do you have anybody online or here?
No comments.
All right, we'll close the public comment and let's have a discussion or a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes.
And a second,
Second.
seconded, no discussions? All right, let's go for a roll call.
Chair Wei.
Here, yes,
Vice Chair Meadows.
yes,
And Director Walia.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
thank you. So we are going to number two, CEO update. And discussions.
We have a packed agenda in front of us. I wanted to give you just an overview of the next few months of what we'll be doing, the board members. I did talk about the board meeting too. So we'll talk about our strategic focus areas as we are updating our work plan. Today, you're going to be hearing about the budget and stress test. So these three things go together. As we are looking at our future, we're looking at risks, make sure that our reserves are adequate. The flip side of that is the opportunities to how we can continue to accelerate achieving our mission. We want to fund adequately to take advantage of opportunities. So you'll be seeing that. We'll be meeting with the executive committee end of May. We'll bring to the board in June like an overview of the budget. The idea is by August, all the numbers should be finalized. And in September, hopefully we'll have a very boring board meeting with the budget. That's typically, we have a lot of back and forth beforehand. So just to give you an update on that, that's kind of the timeline. Thank you. And Amrit, did you want to add something?
Yeah. I think our plan is to bring to the board in August, right?
Yes, so in August will be the final numbers, essentially, not the numbers, but not for approval. Approval will be in September.
Not in June, but June will be exactly.
Okay,
The other thing is good news. S&P, it's a credit rating agency.
yes,
They reaffirmed our credit rating, an A credit rating, very good credit rating, investment grade credit rating. So we're very pleased about that. They initially gave this credit rating in January of 2021. And this is the second time they reaffirmed the credit rating. And the rating reflects our financial strength, first that provide ample liquidity. Also, they highlighted our clean power portfolio and the strong customer base that we have, and good governance and proactive risk management. So all these activities that we're reporting to you basically are being monitored by the rating agency. Like credit rating. Credit rating is very important because the more highly rated we are, it affects our ability to transact and the cost of business, and actually also has an impact on our financial liquidity via the fact that we can get more unsecured credit lines of credit with counterparties as well as with California ISO. So important metric for us. So that's good.
thank you, Guru Jamit. Open up for questions. I do have a question. So the credit rating for S&P, the last time was 2021.
That was the first year they issued.
Right.
Each year they do an assessment whether they're going to maintain that or change that.
Okay,
They did one last year. They
we stayed
affirmed the same rating
this year again. Wonderful.
Starting. They give us a whole bunch of data requests, a lot of information. Right to that,
Right.
do their own analysis and shouldn't have been.
So that's like affirmation from a trusted source.
Correct.
Right. Good. Any more questions? If not, I'll open to public comment.
No hands raised, Chair.
Okay, I'll close the public comment period, and then, so this is just a report for us to, listen in. All right, great. Now we're moving to the third item, which is the results of the stress test analysis for fiscal year 2024 to 2028. The planning horizon, so discussions, staff report.
Yes, so I will do that. So okay, so this is a discussion item. If you remember when we met in February, we went through our enterprise risk management framework. I'll do a brief recap of that framework. And at that time, I explained one of the critical components of that framework in how we assess our risk is the stress test. So now we have completed that. So I'm going to present the analysis and the finding of the stress test. And in doing so, I'm going to go through how we constructed the stress test. We'll look at one of the big risk drivers of the stress test is basically collapse in market prices. So we'll go through how we constructed that. We'll talk about the results of the analysis and what the implications are in terms of what level of reserve we should be targeting. Then we'll talk a little bit more about the next steps. And as I am going through this, feel free to ask me questions along the way. So this is a brief recap of the enterprise risk management framework. I don't expect you to read the pictures on the right. They just mean to give you illustration that those materials are in the appendix if you wanted to, or a sample of it. So enterprise risk management, this is a comprehensive organization-weighted assessment of risk. If you remember, there were three main components we talked about. We talked about the risk register, where we record all of the organization's key risks. We list what the current mitigations are, what additional mitigations are, and basically helps identify what our risk tolerance level is. We can't always get rid of all the risk, but it's all about risk management. So, and it helps prioritize in the sense as to where as an organization our efforts should be. And when we talk about risk, remember it's both risk and opportunity. Another way of looking at opportunity is foregone opportunity cost if we didn't exercise on a particular opportunity. So it encompasses both, and it helps frame our strategic focus areas. I'll talk a little bit more when we talk. And then the matrix of how we assess, what's the likelihood of the risk materializing, and if it were to materialize, what the impact or the consequences on basically the ability to carry out our mission. And then we talked about stress test, which is the focus of this discussion. It's an essential component of the enterprise risk management. Basically look at the risk register and say, certain of these scenarios were to occur and occur simultaneously. And there we use some management judgment as to which combinations we want to pick. And you say, if these were to occur, and usually these are extreme but plausible scenarios, what the impact would be. And it's very important for our business because we have a trading portfolio, power procurement trading portfolio. So the risk, every week we monitor the risk of this portfolio, but that's using standard risk metrics. And those risk metrics are not going to pick up things like disruption, right? So we, as a stress test, we basically say, what if these extreme but plausible scenarios were to happen? Are we in a position to withstand that? And what can we do to position ourselves? If you remember this Silicon Valley Bank, one of their criticism was, as a banking organization, they did not do a stress test. They should have done a stress test, basically look at what the impact to them would have been, if there was a disruption in the interest rate market. And let me tell you, the power prices that we deal with is orders of magnitude more volatile than interest rates. So it's a very volatile commodity that. So now on the stress test, we did stress test last year. And we are building off of the learnings from last year. We don't want to necessarily repeat the things that we know will have the same impact on us. Last year when we did stress tests, we learned that the scenario that had the biggest impact on us was a price collapse, not a price increase. Although we did look at scenarios where prices were increased. And I'll talk about that in upcoming slides. So this year's stress test construction, we basically looked at a price collapse scenario in an economic recession. You know, there's talks about economic recession with the way the interest rates, the Fed is managing monetary policy. It's more likelihood now of getting into an economic recession. And that increases the likelihood of energy prices coming down. What happens is the industrial demand would go down. And when the demand goes down, the power prices can come down. And along with that scenario, if that were to happen, what if we were to lose the load? Because our industrial and commercial load would likely go down. You know, what if our customers' ability to pay their bills were to increase? You know, we had more uncollectible bad debt expense. And then there are some other additional scenarios that are very credible that we modeled last year that we're also modeling this year, which is basically this regulatory uncertainty called posting to a provider of last resort. What is a provider of last resort? It's basically for us, a provider of last resort is PG&E. In other words, if we were out of business, our customers would fall back to PG&E. PG&E would be obligated to deliver energy so that customers have uninterrupted service. So what PG&E is saying, and some of the other solar in the States are saying, is that, hey, if the CCA were to fail, we want to make sure we have enough financial liquidity that we can step into this role. They're saying, as a result, we make the CCAs post financial security requirement. Right now, that posting requirement is very low, like $147,000. But under some mechanisms that these IOUs are proposing at the CPUC, this can increase significantly to, at the upper end, like 2 months of posting, 2 months of power cost posting, which could be somewhere between $80 to $150. That's huge. We're hoping that it doesn't go to that level. This is still being worked out in the CPUC proceedings, where we're participating along with other CCAs and CalCCAs to make sure that this is not an overrequirement on us. So that's one of the ways we're managing the risk. But nevertheless, we want to be able to prepare ourselves. So we have modeled in the stress test, we had to post not 80 or 150 million, something like 40 million. Because if prices were to collapse, then the posting requirement would also come down. So it's kind of consistent with the scenario that we're constructed for the stress test.
Where do we post the full pack? Or do we give it to PG&E or
We would give it to PG&E in the sense that it could be a letter of credit. So basically, that means that's some money that's carved out and tied that we can touch.
That's
So
restricted?
Yes.
Can they use?
They can use it only under certain provisions, which is if a CCA were to fail.
Okay, so at least it'll be kept safe somewhere.
Yes.
I'm not saying I agree,
Like an escrow
right, but
account,
it's,
or
we can't touch it, but they also
cannot
can't.
touch it until certain provisions were. Yeah. And the last item here is MTM losses on investments. As you know, we are moving more and more our money into investments away from the bank. We want to know when we need the money. What if we had to basically sell off those investments? Could we lose money? And this is a very low risk, and the way we design our investment portfolio, we're aware of this, is that most of the funds we hold for the government code is in low risk assets. And a lot of the bonds that we would hold in an economic scenario, recession scenario, interest rates would tend to go down. Fed will start raising interest rates, if anything, bring it down, which should actually increase the price of bond price. Interest rates go up. Inverse relationship. And bond prices tend to go up. Because the existing bonds were executed at higher coupon rates.
So may not be connected, but you talked about the rating that we just got, the A rating. Does that
Yes.
minimize some of these postings and
Absolutely.
stuff? So it's an advantage in these scenarios.
Thank you for bringing that up. So the large counterparty collateral posting, that's exactly what it's related to. So what we model is, what if we were to get a credit downgrade
Okay,
result? And then we could have, even though our financials look good, we may not have the cash to run the business because all these collateral calls get triggered with counterparties where they said, hey, SVCE, our risk to you has increased now. You know, because the contracts are not in favor. In other words, we locked in prices that could be higher than what the market is. And they're saying, are you going to be able to honor your commitment? They're saying is there are provisions in our energy contracts that basically triggers that, you know, on certain level of credit given us, we have to start posting collateral. So we could have a lot of cash go out of the organization, manage the cash flow, that perspective. So this is a big risk as well. Okay, so now let's look at some of the key takeaways. Why do I say price collapse is a big risk for us? You know, you think when prices go up, that's going to be bad for us because our power procurement will go up, right? That's true. But remember, power procurement, we forward hedge. You know, we hedge our portfolio, which means we lock in prices, not 100%, but to a large extent. There are hedging thresholds that's our energy risk management policy. So when prices drop, our power procurement cost is not going to go down considerably. We've already locked in at what prices we're going to pay. But it turns out our revenues will go down quite a bit. Our revenues are a function of our prices. They say how. So this chart illustrates that. Look at the illustration on the left there. The SVCE gen rate, in other words, the rate we charge our customers by the blue box. The two things can happen when power prices come down. PG&E's generation rate can come down. We want to stay below that rate. We want to provide our services at a competitive rate, right? So that black line would come down. That comes down, then the blue box has to shrink. The other thing that will happen is that the orange box, the PCIA, this is basically the payment our customers have to make to PG&E for being a CCA customer. And basically what it is PG&E saying, when you customer were part of our portfolio, we made some commitments on your behalf. Those commitments, the above market cost of those commitments go with you. So when prices come down, the above market cost, those resources goes down. Goes up, right? So, so the PCIA rate goes up. The orange bar goes up. Black line comes down, which means our rate that we charge to our customers. So that's why I say revenues are a function of our prices. So that's the key takeaway. In the next slide, I want to make this point. A busy slide, but I just want to make the points that are highlighted, that are bolded there. Even when we're looking at this year's financial projection, right? You say, oh, we're having a good year. We can't 100% bank on that. Because what happens is when PG&E sets a PCIA rate, their generation rate, it's based on a forecast what this year's prices would have been, right? Then they have a true-up mechanism. So there's a balancing account that basically trues up to the amount of money they were supposed to collect for both their generation rate and PCIA that they collected. They end up under collecting that. And because this year they thought prices were gonna be higher. If prices come down this year, next year, PCIA will go up and rate come down, right? So that's why I said we can't really bank on current years because we could be giving this money back in the form of higher PCIA rates the following year. So we have to, that's why in the stress test, we look at 5-year horizon, but more closely the 2-year period. Because I have to look at 2 years of financials, not just 1 year and say, I've got this great bottom line, spend this money. Because let's look at next year too and the risks that are out there.
So the question is, the true ups is just 2 years would be good, or you want to do more than 2 years?
So the balancing account works for 2 years. In the future years, we look at what forecast is. But on an expected basis, those rates are what our forecast is showing. But the true up is basically looking at what they assumed that which actually went into the rates and what the actual prices would be. That will be settled at the CPUC. It happens in December.
Can I ask a question? That this is about a general observation, and I could be wrong about it, so I want to check it because I can't. Every time we have one of these conversations, all the factors work to sort of minimize. They seem to work to minimize the potential for profit for the CCAs because you've got the IOUs, hedging their risk to this competition. And so the state doesn't really seem to be incenting clean energy because all these balances are driving the prices close together in almost all these scenarios. So your risk test, you're risk testing everything, but anytime you get too far ahead, the factors seem to take you back to not really making as much of a profit. So I'm not understanding, this is kind of a philosophical question, but it doesn't seem like the state, which ultimately is sort of what's driving these rules through the CPUC and such, is really incenting this industry, or am I missing something?
So
I mean, it's complicated.
two things.
Yeah.
The mechanism I talked about right now is just market prices, which is unpredictable. State doesn't necessarily control.
Right.
Their
Doesn't
actions
control
can affect it. Certain actions can affect it. The MTR, for the most part, these are market prices driven. And then the other has to do with the way they regulate.
That's
Right,
what I'm
so the
talking about.
utility-
Yeah.
Utility is not at risk for the energy procurement piece. Utility says, I buy this, this is my cost of buying
Yes.
power. The PUC says, you can get that money back. If you don't collect it in rates this year, collect it next year.
Right.
So utility is not, and that's a regulatory compact for them being a regulated monopoly.
Right.
We, on the other hand, are kind of like a business. We don't have this regulated monopoly. We don't have the CPUC saying, if you didn't make money this year, we'll give it to you next year. We are subject to the market.
Okay.
So
So that's where some of this disconnect is then. They're trying to keep it stable because they are the provider of last resort, right? You can't have that go away. Is that part of what's driving?
Well,
I know I'm kind of up here, but it helps me understand how these factors all interrelate and what the risks are.
So it's funny because investor-owned utilities are private companies.
Are what?
Private companies, right? They are shareholders.
Yeah, right.
But they are more protected from this regulated monopoly standpoint than we are as a public entity, because we are actually more subject to, as like any other business.
Right.
We have to manage these market
Right.
risks because we can say next year, hey, customers pay us more because last year we gave you this discount.
Right.
They may just leave us. So we have to
Right.
be a little bit more prudent. Whereas PG&E, they even if their customers leave, they'll take the pot of dollars and spread it over the remaining customers, or as they've done with PCIA,
Yeah,
say
exactly.
those commitments go with you,
Right.
customer.
Right,
So they have these.
And all the
non-bypassable
legislation
charges
is making sure, which I mean, makes
to
sense.
protect the utility.
Exactly, and the PCIA is part of that
Yeah,
because
so it's
we
called
all
like a
use-
non-bypassable charge. We don't have such mechanisms. We
Uh-huh.
can't say, hey, customer, if you leave us, this will go with you.
right, no.
So we have to be more prudent in how we
Mhm.
manage our finances.
Okay, thank you, because I've been wrestling with, it's hard to win
Right,
from the SVCE perspective
yes,
when,
you're exactly right. So I'm gonna go back to your original question. So you understood from this?
Yeah.
The IOUs have fantastic insurance.
yes,
essentially.
exactly.
Great insurance, we
Yes.
don't.
Mhm.
But going to your question about, is the state incenting clean energy
Mhm.
investments?
Mhm.
Yes, they are.
Mhm.
And this gets to this legislative bill, for example, but the way they see it is IOUs, the private utilities, can actually build everything that's necessary. So the state hasn't let go of the very aggressive goals, and we will either achieve it or come very close to it. But so AB 1373, for example, as the central procurement entity, which is the Department of Water Resources,
Yes,
or the IOUs can buy renewables at scale to meet the goals. So that's, they tend to look at the solution
Right.
from an IOU standpoint.
So their incentives also
Correct.
tend to be focused on infrastructure more so than, they're not tipping the market scale in favor of CCAs.
No.
We're totally up, prone to the market.
Yeah.
But they are incenting investment in infrastructure, so, yeah, okay, I'm just trying to, there's just so much, I keep saying, well, where's the win? I mean, the win is in the technology at the end and the cleanness, but in terms of a business, it's like hard to get ahead and stay ahead.
Yeah, and the PUC can actually change
They
some of the
could,
rules
Mhm.
to have CCAs be more effective parties in this energy transformation.
Mhm.
It tended not to go with several ideas that we proposed. So,
Mhm.
and that's why our policy, our advocacy with our staff and through Cal CCA, we keep leaning into that. We tend to have like more defeats than victories, and we are inching our way.
Thank you, I know it was kind of a segue, but I just was struggling with how it all fit together.
That's very important, because we have to understand those dynamics.
Yeah.
because We
Mhm.
have to manage our finances, to be able to understand those risks. Very good point. So in this slide, this is just a summary slide. So key point being, if prices come down, PCIA goes up, PG&E rate goes down, and our revenues go down. This is where the risk is that we're most concerned about. Price coming down. So now let's look a little bit about prices. Prices are at an all-time high. They're extremely volatile. So as you can see, this map shows in a short amount of time, see how prices have gone up significantly. And what I'm showing you here is something called forward prices. What do I mean by forward prices? So if you look at any one of these lines, the green line says 2028. So if I were to buy energy for calendar year 2028 for delivery in 2028 right now, I can go to the market, there's a price for that energy. The price changes day to day. So these are forward prices, and then each of the months in the past, the negative there shows how far back in time what they were trading at before. So if we had bought in 18 months ago, we'd have locked in at lower prices, which we did. If we were to buy now for future delivery, the prices are a lot higher, right? And this is what we use for our budget purposes. We don't come up with our own metric model to say what prices are. We look at what prices are trading at, where the market is. Use the market data to basically model our budget. So that's an important thing to remember about forward prices. So you can see the prices are significantly high. Then on the right side, we show what our model stress test prices are. You can see that model stress test prices are not that stressful if you look at it in the context of history. It's not that long ago, this is where the prices were. It's very credible and plausible. Prices can revert to these levels. So that's why I say we're modeling extreme scenarios that are very possible it can happen. So it's prudent to basically manage to these levels of risks. And in this slide, I show you some historical volatility of prices. This is natural gas prices, but natural gas on the margin sets the price for power. So if I were to graph power prices, they would look same trend. And you can see in 2008, during the financial crisis, the last great recession, prices in a short amount of time dropped as much as 70%. So again, very plausible scenarios that we're modeling. And our stress test prices are modeled not at 70%, 44% decline one current level. And the 1 percentile statistically modeled distribution, it comes to at 1 percentile level. There's a 44% drop from. Next, we get into the results now. Base case versus stress case. So base case, which is, we take the forward prices as we projected them in the previous slide, and we model our base case. If prices would prevail, all the modeling assumptions that we put in, our financial picture looks very. But I don't want to hone in on those numbers because there's so much uncertainty around these prices. Huge distribution around these prices, right? And also we had to make certain assumptions in this base case scenario that would consist with a stress case scenario. Like what happens to the RE prices, which are not as observable in the marketplace. So some of those prices are model prices. So the focus that I want to emphasize is what we want to concentrate it is not so much on the absolute value of these price levels, but the delta between the base case and the stress case. And in the slide, I list a lot of caveats about how you should see what they projected based on PCI, PG&E generate assumptions. We don't have insights into this model in the best we can available data. There's a lot of uncertainties. On the right side, what does that mean? The stress case as we model were to happen shows that our cash balance, our reserves would down significantly. A drawdown of 185 million from our current. And the table there shows days cash on hand. And our expenditure is about $1 million a day. So when I say we would be left with end of fiscal year 2024 with 150 days of cash on hand, it's equivalent to saying we'll have about $157 million run rate of pay. So you can see because of the 2-year impact, 2025 goes down very low. Starting 2026, we actually are negative. Our reserves, current assumption being that we still want to keep rates at least a 1% discount to PG&E rates. So what we want to do in the stress test, similar to what we did last year when we did the analysis, is we want to basically target to build our reserves to the level such that if the stress test scenario would occur, within the 2-year horizon, we don't fall below 120 days of cash. That we build to a reserve levels so that if a drawdown of 185 million would occur, we're at least left with 120 days of cash on hand. And over 5-year horizon, we are left with 90 days of cash on hand. We don't go negative as the previous slide showed us. So that's how we come up with the target level and the upper maximum target levels. And the current levels are shown there. And that was based on last year's stress test. These numbers will move around as market prices move around. And when we do, right now I'm calling this illustrative new targets. The targets we will bring to the committee, this committee, and to the board in August, after we do our budget analysis in July. And when we do the budget analysis in July, we will take the same stress test and we'll run it through the prices that are consistent with those that were budget. So it's consistent in the assumptions and how we model all the elements of coming up with the budget levels. At that point, we'll have a new set of numbers, and then we'll talk about the merits of should those be our targets, should we stay with existing targets, but that will be an indication. So the methodology that we're proposing is take the stress test analysis, refresh it for new prices, and the methodology is target to make sure we don't fall less than 120 days year period. Filter that level of reserves and don't target the reserves such that we don't fall below 90 days of on hand. Stress test scenario.
Sorry. I have a question for you. This is very prudent, financial management. But the other CCA, similar organizations, are they following the same planning? Because I think their success or failure to affect our operations. Do we have any, do you work with other similar?
Yes, we do work with all CCAs have a reserve targets. Most of them targeting the target level is 6 months of or 180 days. Some CCAs have recently increased. Number I think has gone up to like 290 days. CE has increased to 240 thereabouts, and we'll have this. I have this in the appendix.
I mean, and I think Amrit and the finance team jointly with the other teams, Pro, did a really very good job in terms of being sophisticated. And I think Amrit's talked about the evolution, you know, how we've evolved and made it better each year. So as far as other CCAs go, CFOs do meet. The CPUC is very interested in how we manage our finances, because if any one CCA goes under, it's a disruption for customers.
Right.
Right, so they have an interest in it also. So there's a joint interest that Cal CCA also is communicating with the CPUC, what kind of financial policies that each CCA has adopted. So there's almost like a minimum threshold that has been communicated that all of us need to meet. I think this goes even beyond that. And over the next year, we'll share more with other CCAs.
And these metrics are very important. The FSR, the polar posting requirement I talked about. CPUC is very much interested in how much liquidity reserves are basically what gives us out. It's also an important metric by the credit rating agencies. They're able to sustain the ratings, so the improvement in liquidity that there's. And one of the things they highlighted was proactive risk management.
Just a quick comment. There are so many levels of complexity, and I'm very asked that question. What I'm hearing is there is good collaboration amongst the CC community. That's critical. Going back to there is the incentive. This industry, yes, IOUs are one approach, in some sense very different, is have the collaboration together for the common good, for the common. Just wonderful. And it also shows up in the contracts when there are times when we do a joint contract.
That's exactly right. We have California Community Power, is a formal collaborative arrangement. And we have done joint projects, 7 CCAs together, of more than $2 billion. And then there's another one called CCCFA, California Community Power Financing Authority, which is the authority that has the prepaid deals. Yeah, just like each of you individual cities have joint projects on a water treatment plants, cities association, etc. Yeah, so very similarly on the energy side, but we all knew CCA is basically, most of us were created in the 2016 timeframe and after. So still evolving, still maturing.
You guys are doing.
So that pretty much concludes the stress test analysis. As a reminder, next steps, send this to the board meeting. Then we'll come back with a proposed target along with proposed budget in August, September, along with approving the budget. And I'll be happy to.
Norbit, questions from?
I have weeks ago in the exec committee meeting, every time, I do have a comment. I mean, thank you so very much for going through all of this and explaining it in a manner that we can all get all the pieces together and have the comfort of knowing that you are working together, you to think ahead of all the challenges that would likely face. As simple as that, I don't know. Trying to hear something.
So if there's no questions, I'd like to open up for public comment. Any, online? Okay, so I'll close the public comment. So more discussions, more comments from the board.
I would just say it's such a complex and technical subject matter that I'm always impressed at the people that you've been hiring, that I've seen at least in my time, and to be able to do this sophisticated analysis. I mean, you can't just pick any random person off the street and hire them to do this. I don't know where you're recruiting from, but good job. I mean, are you looking for financial people, or is it specific, like, is there energy modeling expertise that, yeah, because you would need it, both, yeah.
It's a technical
Yeah.
field, we need a lot of technical expertise, so we hire people with a certain level of expertise, so Ida's here with financial background coming from NIPA, our authority in New York,
Okay.
a lot of financial credit risk management background. We hired someone recently on the risk management side who's done quantitative risk modeling in hedge funds,
Yeah.
but that analytic translates to our business. So these analytical skills, business, and of course on our procurement team, people with contracts, trade, how you execute, technical. You need the technical expertise.
Also very brand new frontier. So use your skills, but everybody's learning and creative and analytical skills. Do this. I'm thinking about our high school kids. They probably don't know these professions exist. So it would be very good if we could, as out of the some internship.
The board just approved 3 internships.
Oh, that's right, we
Climate-
did, yeah.
The Climate Fellows Program. We've had great success we've done this in the 6th year we've been doing it. We've had success in having these young people spend about 10 months with us. And we've actually hired a couple of them as employees. And some of them have landed with other CCAs and energy venture funds also.
Thank you for the update, that's really great.
Can I make a
Sure.
comment on that? I know it's not on the agenda,
Mhm.
but that's something been on my mind as well, the high school. They are interested in this subject. A lot of
They
those-
are,
A lot of those students come to me at different events and when I try to share with them, they don't quite realize. So I think offline, if there is something in our cities that we can, not grading work for your team, but
Just. Okay, so we're moving to item number 4. The fiscal year 2023-2024 budget framework discussion, and I think Amit, you're on again. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So the purpose of this is obviously, as we talked before, the budget will be constructed in July. But what we want to talk about is the framework of the budget. So what we're going to talk about the principles, the assumptions that go in, seeking feedback on those principles and assumptions. And even though we're proposing some methodologies here, we may tweak them based on what we find the results to be, to make sure that they're meaningful. And so main areas that I'm going to discuss, and some of this will be repetitive, previous discussion, for example, revenue modeling. What is the, mentioned in the stress test analysis, PCIA and PG generate. Uncertainty is a big, how we're going to manage that. Reserve targets, we talked about that. And then how do we balance priorities? We talked about building reserves to basically withstand the risks we're facing. How much customer discount do we give? How much do we target towards reserves? How much additional do we set aside for programs in addition to what we fund? % of our revenues every year. Basically advance in our mission. And we talk about power supply cost, which is very volatile, biggest component in our portfolio. And we'll talk about a little bit about some of the other cost drivers. That this timeline. So at this point, we're doing the high-level budget framework. Either May or June, we'll go to the executive committee. At that point, we'll have a little bit more insights into the budget based on some of the projections we're going to see from PG. Hopefully Monday, when they issue their ERA forecast, which will give first indication of their forecast, what their rate and PCIA would be for. And then in August, we present the draft to the finance committee and then to the board. So one thing to note is Andrea is going to be reaching out to you guys very soon for a meeting in early August. It has to be in that first week. It starts on July 31st, because the following week is the board meeting. It'll be a very short amount of time to take your feedback on that reflected before we make presentations to the board. Packages will go out that Friday of that same week. Which is because we don't have committee or board meetings. Early August, we come, the finance committee, present the budget. There are high-level feedbacks, incorporate them very quickly. We'll just tell the board that the following month and following week, we present the board, so that we get all of the board's feedback, comment, incorporate those in August. Then when we go to the board in September, very short presentation because they know what the budget is, and adopt the budget so that when we start our fiscal year in October, we have a budget. And then, as always, in March, we will do a mid-year budget. It's very important for our budget because, so much depends on market prices, which is that we use where the market is at the time. Construct the budget is a snapshot of market prices mid-year, but basically allows us to do true up and make investments.
you were saying August 9th. Sorry, because I'm seeing it's very tight. I post the agenda on the 4th, Friday the 4th. And if you're only looking at August, it's August 1, 2, 3. I forget, are we taking August off in my city. I'm not. But typically the first Wednesday is the council meeting. And sometimes last year we canceled both of them. My preference would be Wednesday, even if we have canceled it, but it's tight.
Which Wednesday are you?
August 1st. We may not have a council meeting right now, I'm forgetting which one, because different agencies have August or July off.
Oh, we have a little bit of both. The other complexity, so I mean, that's,
And don't we have I lose track, Cities Association or something, I can't keep track who's. when.
yeah,
So just as an FYI, that may be something.
Feel has August off. Cancel both August meetings.
Does that mean you're not going to be there?
No, I'm here. Actually, it's better. I don't have city meetings. I can just do this.
you have more time, yeah,
But
right,
some might take vacations or might have,
right.
ask the board members who are representing Cupertino, say, don't take vacations in August.
So you're asking,
Highlight that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so actually, okay, so you're saying we have to take, not only do we have to have this meeting, but we have to take it to our councils?
No,
Yeah,
no,
No,
I am
it doesn't go
saying
to our council.
Having this meeting before the 4th.
Yeah.
She has to put
Mhm.
this together for the
Mhm.
9th.
Mhm.
On the 4th, she sends it. Am I,
Yes.
right?
You're,
So that leaves August 1, 2, or 3 for us to meet, this team to meet.
Right,
unless we want to meet on the Monday, which is the 31st of July. Yeah,
I'm
so-
probably
I'm here.
out of town, but I can video in, I'm not inaccessible, I'm just not local
In or
necessarily.
outside jurisdiction, just wanted to
We
highlight
don't
that.
have to make that.
Yeah, we don't need to do that now, yeah,
Andrea's gonna send us a polling.
Right.
It's just good for them to know that.
Good, so
And if,
Yeah.
if they have
Yeah.
to Zoom in, they have to do the, format like, issue things.
yeah, but that'll be in July.
my concern will be the jurisdiction, on not the zooming per se,
You need a quorum here,
quorum
or-
in the jurisdiction.
I'm here. I don't take vacation in the summer. It's
Oh,
for
yeah.
kids. It's for parents with kids to take vacation in the summer. I'm not going to.
it's for
take off.
council members who don't have meetings.
Okay,
All
so
right,
Okay, so in this slide, I just wanted to tie the pieces together, SVC planning and budgeting process. We talked about enterprise risk management, and we talked about strategic focus area. So all of these are process and steps we take to achieving our mission, right? You may say, well, isn't enterprise risk management new, and we always had strategic focus areas? Yes, so the strategic focus areas always focused on the risks and opportunities, basically serve our mission. What the enterprise risk management does, it just provides a framework to be more comprehensive and take that to the next level. So we're still in the process of developing and shaping the enterprise or ERM framework, and it's gonna further and further help refine and be formative in our strategic focus areas. And then those are the focus areas, and we basically set our budgets to make sure we're in alignment with our goals. All of this is geared towards achieving our mission.
I would just say, in my experience working with modeling, it forces you to identify and poke at your assumptions, because the assumptions drive, if you have assumptions that are invalid, but you never challenge them or you don't poke at them, then they're gonna get you in the end, right?
Excellent point. Perfect. Because, even though sometimes you don't have to model something to know
Yes,
what it is, but the modeling, into the process
Process.
of modeling
Yeah.
provides more insights
Yeah.
and more meaning. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. Next slide, we talked about, so one of the key elements of budget is obviously what are our revenues. The revenues is quantity times price. Quantity is not so much of a variability. Yes, in a stress test it can be, but the bigger component is the rate we charge. Talked about in the previous discussion, the blue box. It depends on market prices. It depends on our prices. So big uncertainty is what PG&E's generation rates will be and what. So as I mentioned, we'll get a first insight today. PG&E's files per its scheduled calendar. what the preliminary outlook would be. And then the normal process is that they update that rate, those projections in fall. And based on that forecast, CPUC adopts rates in December. So we don't really know until late December. A CPUC meeting is what their actual PCIA be starting January. Right. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. How are we going to model these two rates? We're going to use a Cal CCA model, consulting model called Nugent Consulting Group. This is a team that this is a model we have been using for a while now. It's a very good model. We actually work with this team very closely. And the team just had a meeting about an hour ago with that, where we're helping them enhance features of that model. So this is a model where they take publicly available data, model what PG&E's generation rate would be, what PCIA. It'd be nice if PG&E would at least share with us CIA, but we don't have that insight, even though it's so directly related. What we also the commission to consider. So anyways, our recommendation is we're going to use the Cal CCA model, but we're going to calibrate it to PG&E's rates. For example, the rates that we're expecting to come on Monday, try to find out what forward prices, what date forward prices PG&E used, name dates forward prices in the Nugent model, and see how close the model comes. If the model tends to be over or understating, we'll probably use that as an adjustment factor. How we forecast PCIA and rates. And the reason we don't want to just go with the PG&E error rates is because prices are so volatile between now. If PG&E is issuing rates in forecast in May, it's probably based in June. Prices sometimes in March. They're modeling. Last year they used, I think, March. By then, prices have already moved. We don't want to be that much updated. And then we're going to be coming up with a power supply cost based on where we see the market is. We don't want a disconnect that in our revenue. Better for us to use this model. The other thing is, I want to emphasize is we can use this as primarily for budget setting purposes, right? Chances are we are going to continue for this year. We recommend we continue with our current rates that we have, 4% discount. And we can, for setting the budget, we can assume a new discount rate for January through September of next year. But the board, as they did last year in December, we have more certainty what the rates are going to look like and PCIA is going to look like. The board can basically at that point make a decision as to, hey, continue with our budgeted discount or not change the discount. We will revisit this. That would be our recommendation. That is that we revisit final rate changes in December. Beat this more for budget setting.
Right, I follow the sequence time-wise you're saying. What I missed was what discount rate are you going to assume, right? 4% or the 1%?
So if we don't want to change rates, we don't want to introduce too many rate changes to our customers unless we see financials are deteriorating. Then we monitor financials on a weekly basis. But what we will make a recommendation as to what we should target for this rate.
Did we disappear from our audience? Oh, yeah, okay.
Oops.
Can they hear us?
Sometimes I just miss, share so much information, very meaningful.
They can hear us, they just can't see us currently.
So should I continue?
Yeah, Nick's gonna come.
That they can see the slides?
They should be able to see
No,
us.
that's.
Okay, so the reserve targets, I'll go through this very quickly. This is tying into the previous discussion, right? We're gonna propose new reserve targets, and that'll be based on the stress test analysis, which will be refreshed. And the methodology is target to keep 120 days for the next 2 years for the reasons we talked about, 90 days for the last 3 fiscal years of the 5 years.
Wait, was that? Sorry, could you go back? So the middle staff recommendation. Reset upper reserve target? Not, isn't that to not fall below 90? Isn't that your lower reserve target or
So
what?
our lower reserve target right now is 120 days. Then
Right.
There's a target level. We're saying set the target level such that if the stress events were to happen, we don't fall below. So how much should we build up to the reserve so we can withstand the risk?
Right, no, I understand that first paragraph, the second paragraph there.
It just says, set the upper target, which is close to 390 days right now. Set it at a level.
Oh, so it's two
higher.
different things you're managing there.
Yes, so that over a 5-year horizon, we don't fall below 90 days
Right.
if the stress were to happen. But over 2-year, which is more
I get
critical.
it, yeah, because you have to move this one to keep that one
Yeah.
where you need it, got it. Sorry, I was just confused.
So on this slide, I alluded to a little bit earlier, one of the things we'll be seeking feedback is how do we balance these objectives, right? What level of discount do we provide to our customers? Objective of building reserves to withstand the risks. And then should we be putting additional money in our programs to advance towards our mission? Each year we fund per earlier board resolution, we direct 2% of our revenues to programs, but we've also recently added more funding towards programs, right? Last fiscal year, we set aside the double down strategy of additional $10, and then this fiscal year in December, the 19 million, $9.5 million, all electric discount, additional discounts, and multi-family direct install. The question will again be, how do we manage these objectives? And then what we will do is we'll come with a package or some options for the committee and the board to consider. This level of discount, this level of funding for programs, level of set aside for reserve. I have several options. Probably we will make a recommendation so that board can then say how we want to balance these priorities and level to keep our discount so that we can provide competitive price services to our customers, but also noticing the fact that we still want to build reserves so we can we're facing and also organization program. This will be an area where we'll need feedback from the committee based on the recommendation options that. And the biggest component of our budget, within the 90%, is the power supply. As I said, power prices are very volatile, which makes it very challenging with the forecasts. That's what our forecast is not going to very lesson. Because to do so would be, you'd have to have perfect foresight. Our prices are trading in. To predict market prices. So noticing that there's that uncertainty, but that uncertainty is somewhat mitigated by the hedging strategy. Currently, we're close to 80% hedged, which means that the remaining percent, which can still be significant variability in our power supply costs, is subject to market prices. And then all the other uncertainties that Monica and our team have contract delays, further uncertainty, and the resource adequacy requirement by changing the Good news is next year and the year. All the work that our team has. So if you remember this year, we resource adequacy prices. We are subject to penalties because of shortfalls. But next year and the year ahead, where we see our requirement, we are fairly well hedged.
In terms of meeting the requirements from.
Yeah, if I may just add one thing. For this year, for each year, they have a year ahead requirement and a month ahead requirement. Before the year 2023, by October of 2022, you have to show you've contracted. We had not contracted enough for this year on a year ahead basis, and that's why we will be subject to penalties. We were also short month ahead, but Monica and Charles have basically closed most of those open positions. So for most of the summer months, we're good. I don't want to disclose quantities in a public meeting in months, but we're mostly there.
Thank you. That's
Yeah, so our recommendation is we stay the course, continue with our hedging strategy that we have in the energy risk management policy. We continue with 100% clean. We don't think there's any reason at this point to change from any of that. So it maintains our customer value proposition and furthers our 24/7. Then the other cost that we will be coming to the board with recommendations is staffing level. So we are currently assessing the additional resources that we may need. There's always a challenge on our decarbonization program side because programs are increasing. Number of programs we have, the rebates and outreach. So that's an area that continues to grow and may need additional resources, team and the customer groups. They're basically as well as in other parts of the organization. Additional staffing needs to be last year. We budgeted 10 new positions. I'm pleased to report that most of our opening positions, slide says 4 remaining positions. We're one more resource coming on the finance side. We are close about to close on another candidate. So we'll have only 2 remaining positions. And the other things are that will be recommendations for salary adjustments and merit increases recommendations. And typically what we look for is cost of living adjustment. Last year we used a 6-month rolling average of Bay Area CPI. We may come back with that same recommendation. I would now go or 8% with the recent decline. But we will use an average that goes. But certainly open to take it. And then we'll propose a number for merit increases. All of these are within the CEO's discretion. Not automatic discretions applied as to how salaries are adjusted. And then we will also do a comprehensive benefits assessment. So we're competitive with other CCAs. Mentioned earlier, these are technical skill sets we need in this organization. And all the CCAs and to make sure we're competitive.
Very important because you train them and then
They go elsewhere. That's the worst of all worlds. Yes. Can I ask a question about the decarb programs? So I don't know. I mean, those programs are almost grants to our customers, right? But with the new, at the federal level, I forget the name of the program now, all the new money that Biden, yeah, so are there grants available there to help fund the decarb programs, and are you looking at those?
Yes, so Bennett Chang is our resident
Ah,
expert
okay.
on that.
Yeah.
We're happy to follow up with a couple of slides. Yes, on electrification, the Biden administration, they put rules together, so that's available. On the transportation side, the rebates for electric vehicles, or mostly American-made, American-assembled cars.
Right.
That's also, there's been a few ups and downs on that.
Right,
Yes, so yes, there's money, and
but would it be available to SVCE versus direct?
No.
No, so it's
That
not,
was my question.
yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Can we get the money to then disperse as, yeah,
so it depends on what, on the
Right.
program side.
Mhm.
The program side, I believe it's direct to customer, it doesn't come to us.
right.
But the IRA has so much money in it.
Mhm.
I'll get back to you with the specifics. I think some of them may be the like block grants,
Yeah,
which
right.
comes to different
Because you would
cities.
think there might be something
Yeah,
available.
but for things like heat pump water heaters,
Right,
it
that's
doesn't go
direct
through
to
us.
consumer. Yeah, okay.
But you can advocate to the customers, there are grants available.
Yes, and
Okay.
actually, we met with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District last
Mhm.
week. And they are in the process of putting together a grant application to the federal government for the MSA outside of Santa Clara County. They're also working with the MSA of Santa Clara County to do a joint application. Just the application gonna cost them close to $2 million.
Just to do the application?
Yeah, just hold it. But the amount of money that would be flowing into this would be in billions.
Because it is very actually intimidating for individuals to
Yes.
apply for any grant. You look at the application like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'd rather not do it.
Yeah, so it's a mix. In some cases, it makes sense to do it at the retail level. Going back to your point, Sally, but the applications are for the region to receive money
Yeah,
for other
okay.
programs.
Right. So you don't need to get back to me then, because you're already on top of it. I just thought maybe there was a pool that could come in here to help supplement the programs, but you're on that.
We may though, in that scenario, end up needing, in going back to the, you don't need to pull the slide. If there's need for more staffing to manage the program so that we can assist our customers to be able to get.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things that Amrita is doing is, we need to have those conversations with our directors and staff about staffing. And so what's the need for current workload for taking care of the opportunities, risk management, so each of the groups, so there's a group. When you think about the evolution, right? So when we started all our contracts, for example, of power supply, we just bought it from the market. Then we invested in long-term PPAs. Those PPAs are coming online. Once you start to operate it, it's a different set of staff that you need to manage settlements. His group does budget, end of the year treasurer report, end of the month treasurer reports, where I just is bringing this together. Zach Liskey is working on all the bills with the CAISO and the developers. So thank you for your support on that. We will bring you, if there's a need for staff. we'll bring
And that can happen anytime, because it's not going to dramatically impact our budget. Thankfully, our budget is large enough.
you. Right, in terms of percentage, and you've also delegated to the CEO personnel officer status, which allows me to increase staff without coming to you for every single change. So we'll look at the envelope again.
Thank you. And I remember we did that last year.
Yeah.
On the board.
And we think that you can adjust your staffing needs. Not
Exactly,
having
you're
to
giving
have the
us
board approve
tremendous
it. Yes.
flexibility.
Because
We
the
need.
board meetings doesn't happen very often. It's just like,
That's right.
yes.
Basically, to address Sally's point, they will not lose the money coming, if at all possible, from the federal government or.
Yeah, they're on top of it,
Which is great.
one would expect.
So is the report complete?
Yeah, just wrapping it up with the next steps. So this is the framework. We'll come back with you with numbers in early August, the board with options, talked about staffing levels, what the discount and combinations of discount and set aside reserves and programs. Hopefully, as you get those groups in. That concludes.
So our fiscal year starts October. A little different from,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking.
Hard to remember because it's,
Just remember August is a heavy month, don't travel.
That's when most councils take off.
yeah, exactly.
Any more questions for Amit? If not, I will open up a public comment. Nobody here, but how about?
No hands raised, Chair.
Okay, so I will close the public comment. But there's no actions taken. There's no
This is
action
just
needed, right?
discussion.
So any more discussions, questions from the board? If not, we'll move to item number 5, treasurer's report format changes. And Armit, you're today is.
He hasn't had his
sandwich.
With
Oh, all right.
IDIS as well. So IDIS reflects a lot of work that IDIS has done, bring this to the next level. So as Krish mentioned, each month we issue part of the board package. We have the treasurer's report that gives highlights of our financials. That's going to continue, but we basically, a bulk of that comes from our account. We have an external accountant, which all the CCAs, with the exception of 4, use that firm. Very good understanding of our business at CCA. So bulk of those financial statements come from our accountant. But in addition to that, we provide some summary pages. I do bring out some highlights that we think are pertinent for the board. So we thought this is a good time to refresh that. And our attempt here, and we're seeking feedback, and all is well, we will basically, starting next month. So our intent is to make it more concise and more. And there are 3 areas that we're changing, which is the summary page and an investment page, because we've changed our investment strategy. And some of this is illustrative. The report that I'm presenting right now is illustrative, so don't go with any of these numbers, official numbers. Put it just to say, as we get more additional information, for example, from our investments, we put into investments further into the investment strategy, what we will do with that data, and some enhancements to how we. So I just feel free to chime in at any point here, but go ahead. So as I said, this just highlights that the big chunk there in the green are the statements we get from our accountant. For the most part, we review and we go back and forth, and once we're comfortable, we basically release a set of information to the board. And the summary pages, the additional information are there. Those are what we have. So this is the first page. I'm sure this looks very familiar to you, of the treasurer's report. The left side is page 1, the right side is page 2. So most of the information here will be displayed in a different format. I'll show you what the changes are in the next slide. But some of the information will change. So right now, for example, when it says change in net position, it shows you what our actual net positions as it changes each month. Then it compares it to what our budget is. It's a bit an apples to orange comparison, because in our budget, budget view and financial view is different. Financial view is GAAP accounting view. So in financial view, for example, if we don't spend program dollars, it's not our expense. Budget view, we said 30 million directed towards programs fund, we take that out. We'll just authorize this, we're gonna move into programs funds. Right, we take that as a big drop. In an accounting view, those expenses have not yet spent them. So we're gonna change this so that you get more of an apples to apples comparison as to how our financials are tracking relative to the budget. The power supply expenses there, we don't think this level of detail is meaningful. But we're gonna, what's more meaningful, this is the biggest component of our budget, is why it moves around. So we'll try to display that. Capital expenditures, it's not a big, we're not a capital. We're not gonna display this summary page, but of course, all this information in the financial statements. And the load characteristics will display in a more informative way. The right side will continue to display the makeup of our expenses, because we think that's a message that many new board members should know. We're all about our procurement business when it comes to financials. Greater than 90% of our expense. Some of the financial metrics there will display in a different format that hopefully is more informative. Some of the comparisons for retail sales month, we don't think are that relevant. What really is relevant is how our load is changing. Like that graphical form. And the O&M expenses, comparing it to previous year, this is such a small component of our budget. We don't think that's a good use of real estate. Other information probably more pertinent. Okay, so next slide shows you what the proposed first page would be. So you can see the graph on the left there, and these are illustrative. Small, so it's hard to see. So there's two axes here, right and left, so we can succinctly display a lot of pertinent information. The yellow shaded area shows how our net position is changing, financial net position, basically our balance sheet. Our assets are continuing to grow, our financial net position is continuing. And the blue and orange is showing how we budgeted and where the actual financials have come in. And this is where I said we're going to make this apples to apples comparison. So we're going to adjust the budget numbers to be in line with financial reporting. Instead of as for our budget program dollars, we're going to basically adjust the blue boxes, the budget numbers for the actual expenditures. So comparing them, it's an apples to apples comparison. When you see big changes like you see in January, hey, what happened? You were budgeting to lose a lot of money, actually made money. What happened? And this will, with this in combination of what we see in the next slide, where we have the detailed explanation, you'll see that basically the power prices. You remember the stress test scenario, there was a top line that showed a big drop. Remember what we reported earlier is natural gas prices went through the roof earlier this year. Like, that was never seen before. From January, typically, when we did the media budget, we didn't have insight into what the settled prices were going to be for power for January. So we used the last forecasted price, still based on expectation that the market price for January for natural gas was going to be high, and therefore power prices was the prices when one of the big reasons for natural gas prices was high was a pipeline constraint gas into California. That constraint went away. This is one of the things helping bring prices down. So actual prices came in much lower than budget. You can kind of see that trend. And then the right side, we show our liquidity position. The reserve targets we talked about shows where we are, rather than the metric, second page that we had with that box showed earlier. That message is lost, but here it's easy to see how we're trending relative to the target that we've set minimum, the target level, and the upper reserve. And then the bottom there, we display more information on our investments. So right now, as you can see, we have very little funds in River City Bank. One of the emails I sent, that they're not subject to great risk from a banking crisis because it so happens at the right time, we moved a lot of our money out of bank into the California Asset Management Program. We're going to further remove funding from California Asset Management into our investment strategy last year. We still have to iron out some details, which legal agreements that we're executing right now. And then a lot of those funds will go into a tailored investment strategy that we share with them. You'll see that breakup. So you'll easily be able to see where our funds are invested. Then on the right side, how our funds are tracking relative to our budget. You can see a big increase in January, February timeframe. You can say, why did our returns go up? That's when we implemented our new investment. With money from the River City Bank to camp yield is much higher. Thanks for that significant source of funding we brought in. And the bottom half, then we want to basically track using Treasury index, US Treasury index as a benchmark to see how our portfolio is yielding relative to the Treasury benchmarks. This is an illustrative because we don't have performance of our investment 1 year or let alone. Once we get 3 months of data, we'll start tracking, showing you a graph of this. The next package that will go out in June won't have this metric. They don't have. Once we get that data, anything I'm missing, Iris? Or this will be the new second page. So this is more of a budget view. So as I said, now we'll have a section there to explain why this variance goes through the budget. You can see the big variance happens in January. This is for the same reason. Favorable variance relative to the budget because of the price phenomenon. And we'll continue to display a breakup of our expenses. The table there is a summary of how our budget is tracking relative to the actuals. Much more detail is detailed financial statements. And at the bottom half, the graph will display how our retail sales are relative to budget. The percent changes, that's the green line. It's on the right side of the actual unit there is in gigawatt hours. You can see our load doesn't vary that much. That's why I said the biggest risk in revenues is load. The prices affect. And we have a graph there to display customer data more succinctly. Shows you our customer participation rates. Boast about because we have one of the highest rates. 96% of our customers stay with us, and we use. That's why we want prudent financial management so that we can continue to provide competitive rates. And it also shows you breakup of our residential. Just by number, not by load. By load, actually, it's the other way around. Words about load is. And we show statistics that we were showing before, customer opt-outs and opt-ins. And in the summary table bottom, we're showing you how we're tracking relative to our program expenditures. Any questions?
I have observed that 96%, both residential and commercial.
I have a question. probably not related to finance. When customers opt out,
I think we do, but chances, most of the reasons that we see opt-out is because people moving in and out of territory. The biggest driver.
so most people
statistics.
don't
Yeah,
out.
so that's why that number is stable, but this can never fully reach 100%. So 90, very good rate is always, and
So, but if they opt out because they move, then the new customer is usually gonna be opting in, right?
right.
Well, so what's opt up? Is that opting?
Opt-up is basically going to our green prime.
Oh, okay, yeah,
I mean, green
yeah, I
prime.
yeah, right.
So next slide.
Just one thought, so if opt-outs aren't true, but you've got a balancing opt-in, isn't the net opt-out? I mean,
It depends on
Isn't
the
that-
timing.
it depends on the timing, so there's gaps, okay.
So this is the simple investment summary that we provide. This was okay when we had all our money in the River City Bank account, but we think quite much more information. Just remember, this was the existing slide, and the next slide I'll show you. So a little bit, maybe too much information, let us know. But it shows basically the breakup of our accounts, and what the yield is and what the actual dollar earnings are, interest earnings. But more important is the graphics at the bottom, which is when we say we're invested most of our money, 41 million or so in CAMP, where is that money in CAMP, California Management Program? It shows you the breakdown of where those investments are in that JPA or pool, JPA investment pool. At the bottom, this is just illustrated because we don't have any portfolio yet. But we want to, when we invest, we want to show where those investments are, how much are in treasury bonds, equities, mortgage banks. These are obviously per the investment policy that the board approved. There are strict guidelines of the California government. And as we discussed when the board approved the investment policy, set a maturity level, which is to a chunk of our money in the 2-year maturity horizon, some in the 30-year maturity horizon. It's against high stress tests because access these funds for longer dated. This will show breakdown, and also we will show reports as those investments start happening in FM, what actual investments are to our treasurers. And the last area we're changing is the customer statistics data. So this is the current report. I think we can do better because customer account number doesn't move that much. We show how our accounts receivables are, how much is in the 30-day bucket versus longer dated. More in the longer dated, the more risk we are in collecting those. Our overall write-offs are very low. We have one of the best statistics. It's just the demographics of our
Yeah.
customer profile, and another factor that was noted by graphics of our customers. So this shows the aging, but we think we can display this information a little bit more informatively. The top box there, we don't think is that meaningful, which is what percentage in each of the bucket over time, because that is not as meaningful as what I'm going to show you in the next slide, which is We will show on the top our retail load and the customer participation rate. So this is more data than was in the summary slide. So end of statistics. We still have the accounts receivable breakdown, but what we thought will show is the trend of over time of how our receivables were trending. See some trends there. There was a big increase in receivables indicated by the red arrow there that had to do with a billing issue at I think PG&E that was resolved quickly, and the levels trended back down to where they were. The green line shows the balances that are more than 120 days late in payment. And see a dip there in the green arrow, and that's when the California Arrearage Program, the P stands for, but this was the government funds that were provided to cover utility arrearages. When that came in, that balance goes down. And at the bottom, we show what our historical write-offs are. Show a lot of digits there, probably can round that up to what 10 basis items.
Yeah.
But you can see it's very, very small. Those were the changes. We're happy to take any feedback. We were not implementing them. And then some pieces we roll in once they become more relevant. Not going to take this to the board, but we thought we'd the finance committee get your feedback and incorporate that in.
Questions? We're being asked a question wrong way. So I do have one question. I think I really like the thinking about changing and updating, and who started this? I mean, is the teamwork or just curious? I think that's great. You know, we don't sit on a pedestal and say we're doing good already. And I think give more, evaluate your reports and give more meaningful reports. I think that's
Well,
really
thank
great.
you to the board for giving us additional staff and resources. It was me on my part-time doing this.
Yeah.
So now I resource that's dedicated and looks into that. And then the other thing was the investment strategy. We knew we have more reporting requirements, so it was a good time.
Thank you. Any more?
I had the same comment and the same thought. That you're keeping up, you're aware what you need, that you can make the changes as things evolve in terms of our business and how we are. You're presenting it, putting it together. It's not just presenting to us, it's also how you are. As you said earlier, when you're doing the stress test, modeling process that there's so much learning. If you're not looking at the details, you are on a daily basis.
There is additional metrics that IDIS is tracking, which is financials of other CCAs, how they're tracking, all the things we found in our credit write-up, credit rating agencies. So IDIS is putting that in a spreadsheet. Tracking against those metrics, make sure downgrade in our credit and we can credit. So all those things also go behind the scenes as well.
So which, since you're tracking it, I don't know how much of it is actually available. I mean, the revised report you just showed us, are you able to track most of that information from other CCAs too? And so like I'm not suggesting you do this, but you could have comparable reports for other CCAs. And so you could have a comparative. Is that what you're doing? That's what it sounded like you were saying.
That's what IDIS is doing,
Yes.
because each, most CCAs do it on a quarterly basis. We do it on a monthly basis.
Okay,
The reports are very,
similar.
we do the summary, most of them just do the accounting, what the accountant gives them. They issue the same accounting report, and all of us have the same accountant. So we take that report, we digest it and create these summaries.
And the same and more.
Right. So I have a question. You mentioned government guidelines to also change too. So who monitoring that?
So we have a board adopted investment policy. We have to stay within the guidelines of that policy. So those are the instructions we give for investment advisor. Once they start investing, they have to follow that. And we get reports every month, which we are gonna, as I said, we're gonna attach to this treasury report, all the transactions we did, break up where we are, that pie chart that shows funds are invested. And we will obviously be one.
Let me just step back 1 second here and say Monica and Andrea led an effort last year across the agency on what we call our core competencies. It's just things we want to be better at. And one of the things is continuous learning.
Yeah.
So I think from a board perspective, you're supporting that, coming from the board to that we're just, it's all of us working together, right? So that gives us a sense of like, yeah, this is important for the board, that the board considers learning and improving something that's important. So anyway, I think with part of our culture development and
So there are a lot of charter territories forward.
and we're so busy doing our day-to-day
Yeah.
that literally we have to force ourselves to take some time out to think and
Right.
say, like house cleaning and stuff like
Right.
that. So let's take some time to think, okay.
Mhm.
And so wearing multiple hats, for example, that's the other thing in our culture. It's like the job requirements may change 1, 2, 3 years after we hire someone. So be open to, and we're a small enough organization, we have a very clear mission that what we require of people may change as
Also going back to the same comment about collaboration between the CAs. And I mean, I hope other is also looking to, I'm sure they probably do
Mhm.
what we are doing here, so, actually learn from each other. Sometimes learning from others' mistakes. It's much
Right.
better than learning from your own mistakes.
Yes.
And they share best practices.
Right.
You have actually used all the keywords that some I had in my mind, some I was thinking about, but was wondering what's the correct word. The continuous learning, benchmarking with other CCs, and not making our mistakes, but learning from somebody else's, or even if it's not somebody else's mistake, but just picking up before we implement something. It's staying on top of things strategically, and that's what I really appreciate about SVCE team, that we are constantly looking at. There's a lot on your plate. Will once again say, admire, stay ahead with all that is the requirements, market prices, the money management, the IOUs, what's coming, the constant up and down of the PCIA and the PCIA. I enjoy it.
It is a wonderful culture that's being developed.
we will pass it on to
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's my toughest assignment as a council member, but you've been hearing that from me every year, right from the beginning when I was clueless the first. And I keep on repeating your advice to me, repetitions. I have been shared that with Sally yesterday, completely different context. I asked them because I personally feel in my city, they know I have a very good memory. But with the information overload, the vast range as councillor, I have to remind them, please keep on reminding me. And so your culture, yours helps us do our jobs. Really.
Great. Thank you very much for the support that allows us to do this Yeah, it takes effort on all our part and very fortunate to have a team for the whole. But yeah, touch wood, let's keep it going. So,
if no more questions, I'll open up for public comment. Anybody on Zoom? And no one here. All right, I'll close the public comment area. So that's concludes our agenda, regular agenda items. We're moving to staff remarks, committee remark, member remarks.
I wondered, so the three of us ladies were together last night,
Mhm.
different forum. But there was a presentation at the county, well, the two presentations, but the one I'm talking about was the public health. They've put together this rating system where they look at each city and grade you gold, silver, or bronze. And they had a climate action rating. And I was surprised to see Los Altos was like bronze, which is or you could have no rating or not applicable, whatever. So there's some depth of how they've developed the metric to grade us all on. And I don't know if and so really so what was that metric? So they didn't dive into, of course, that level of detail, but I don't know if it matters to you at all, if what the county is grading your member agencies.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. Right,
Some of them were really.
because I was surprised at some of, what they were, so they've developed their own way to measure it and grade you, but it may or may not be related. It may or may not be as realistic, or, I mean, I don't know, because we didn't see it, but
We would really love to see
Okay.
that. Maybe we can touch base offline.
yeah.
I can do it right after this meeting.
Yeah.
Notes from last night are still with me.
Right, well, yeah, I know, who's had time to clean out our,
You can ask for
portfolios.
that.
but we don't even have do we have the link to that?
I have the
Like,
link,
yeah,
I can
yeah,
leave
you-
the link here with Andrea
Yeah,
after we wrap up the meeting, and they have the policies there that we, as Sally said, they did not show us, but that can be.
they're available, but we just didn't look at them yet. Okay, that's good, because I saw that, and first of all, I was like, what, how can we be bronze, but then it really has a broader effect. You might be interested in either advocating for some different measurement system or, understanding the validity or lack thereof, so.
Okay, so if that's do we go next meeting? Do we know when our next meeting is?
Andrea's gonna set up.
Okay.
And that'll be the August that we're talking about.
So the meeting is adjourned at 2:00.